This is how most people imagine their lives. School for about 20 years, work for about 40 years, then retire and start withdrawing from a nest egg of savings. But there's a problem. Nearly half of all Americans have no retirement savings, and a quarter of Americans over the age of 50 believe that they'll be working forever. In other words, many Americans don't start building that nest egg until it's too late. But there's this growing community of people who subscribe to this idea of FIRE, which stands for Financial Independence, Retire Early. The central idea behind FIRE is that you can retire as soon as your nest egg reaches about 30 times your yearly expenses. For example, if you think you'll spend about $50,000 a year in retirement, you can retire once your nest egg reaches $1.5 million. The FIRE movement came from studies suggesting that you can withdraw between 3 to 4% every year from a portfolio containing US stocks, and it would be extremely unlikely that the portfolio would ever run out of money. For example, let's pretend you're 40 years old and you have $1 million invested in the S&P 500. You want to retire and you plan to live until 90, so your retirement period is 50 years. With a 3% safe withdrawal rate, you can take out $30,000 in your first year of retirement and adjust it for inflation every year. If you did this, there is no period in history where you would have run out of money. The worst time ever to start a 50-year retirement was 1966. If you retired in 1966, 50 years later you would have ended with about $45,000. The best year ever to start a 50-year retirement was 1948. You would have ended with about $58 million. On average, you would have ended with about 13 times what you started with. To reach financial independence, you'll need to either increase the size of your nest egg or decrease the size of your future withdrawals. That's where we get to the different levels of FIRE. The FIRE community defines different levels of FIRE by how much you can safely withdraw every year. There's no strict definition for each of these, but here's how I'd define it. Lean FIRE starts right above the poverty line. If you can draw $30,000 a year, then you can lean FIRE. Basically, you can retire without starving, but you're probably not going to have the best time. To start lean FIRE, you need about $900,000. Regular FIRE starts at the median household income. If you can draw $80,000 a year, then you're regular FIRE. You can live like the average American without working. To reach regular FIRE, you'll need about $2.4 million. Fat FIRE starts at double the median household income, which means that you can withdraw about $160,000 a year. You can live better than most can hope for without working another day in your life. To reach fat FIRE, you'll need about $4.8 million. Those are some pretty big numbers, even to begin lean FIRE. So how can you retire early? It just comes down to simple math. In this example, you'll see how an average household could retire in 20 years. The median household income was about $80,000 in 2024. Assume that after taxes, we're left with about $60,000. Let's assume that this household can really tighten their belts and live on about $30,000 a year in expenses. That leaves about $30,000 a year to invest. If this household started working in 2004, they could have retired in 2024 with over $1.6 million adjusted for inflation. If they withdraw 3.3% from this portfolio, this leaves them with a yearly safe withdrawal rate of about $55,000. Since most of these yearly withdrawals will be capital gains, most if not all of it will be tax-free. So after working for just 20 years, this average household was able to retire with about the same amount of income as they had while they were working. If you raise the savings rate, things look even better. A household earning $160,000 before tax that saves and invests $85,000 a year can reach a similar nest egg size in just 10 years. And if they wanted to work for 20 years, they would have basically reached fat FIRE at $4.7 million with a safe withdrawal rate of $155,000. So yes, it is possible to retire in 10 or 20 years, even for the average household. But this approach does have risk that a lot of people don't consider. Being able to save 30 times your annual expenses is a function of three simple things. How much you can save, which itself is a function of how much you earn and how much you spend, how much you want to spend each year during retirement, and how well the market performs. Two of these things are within your control, and one of them is not. The studies I referred to are based on historical data. Yes, those studies showed that if you had retired with $1 million in the stock market during any year in the past 100 years, you could withdraw an inflation-adjusted $33,000 forever without running out of money. In fact, most of the time, you would have died with significantly more money than you started with. But historical returns do not guarantee future returns. Even if your nest egg would have survived the Great Depression, the Great Inflation, the dot-com bubble, and the Great Financial Crisis, something worse could be waiting for us in the future. There could be some climate disaster, or a US dollar currency crisis, or nuclear war. So it's important to remember that there is risk because we're basing our assumptions of future stock market returns on historical returns. There's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to FIRE. Everyone has a unique preference in terms of when they want to retire, the type of lifestyle they want when they retire, and how much sacrifice they're willing to make today to get there. But at its core, FIRE is a simple idea. Save and invest as much money as you can now so that you can reach financial independence earlier and maybe even retire in your 30s or 40s. If you learned something from this video, like and subscribe for more FIRE and personal finance videos.